We're ready. Let's roll. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to the 5th Annual Marion County Prosecutor's Office Community Justice Academy. For those I'm meeting for the first time, I am Annie Kern, the one that you've been emailing with for the last month or so. The Community Justice Academy is our effort to build on the work of our Community Prosecution Division by keeping in motion the effort to engage and educate Marion County residents, staff from various social service agencies, neighborhood associations, faith leaders, for the purpose of public safety. The focus of the Academy each year will be current topics of interest or inquiries of the criminal justice system. This year's topics were chosen by a team of people in our office, in addition to the evaluation forms that those of you that attended last year, and I think even the year before, we saw a repeat subject that was requested on those evaluation forms. So we do listen to the evaluations and what you're saying. Each of you were given a folder that includes the Academy program agenda. As you can see, the topics are in line with current headlines. Also included for your use are note sheets that we provided, and this year in your folder also is the evaluation form. Instead of handing those out the last day, we went ahead and gave you your evaluation form, and you can make notes on those as we go along. Prosecutor Curry.
Thank you, Annie. Welcome to the 4th Annual Annie Kern Fall Festival. How many here have been here for, this is obviously the 5th time, for at least 3 of the first 4? All right. How many are here for the first time? Okay, for all of you first-timers, I think virtually all of those who held up their hands will confirm, the fact they've been here every single year would confirm that Annie came up with quite a gem of an idea in 2011. I was only half kidding if you got the email with my video where I referred to it as harebrained or screwball idea that Annie suggested in 2011. But in reality, it's turned into a very positive annual project. And again, the fact that so many of you have been here repeatedly reaffirms for us that this is a good thing to do, and it's beneficial. And it's beneficial not only to all of you in the community, but it's beneficial to us as well. Along with the ministers here, I hope I don't offend you by saying that I frequently think that I should refer to myself as Pastor Curry, because I am constantly preaching the gospel of community engagement and community involvement. This is one aspect of that. And the point of our outreach and our community engagement is to involve the citizens and other organizations in the larger issue of public safety. In Indianapolis, we have serious challenges right at the moment. But what is going on in Indianapolis is no different than every urban area in the United States. And certainly, I believe, and I think Chief Height believes, and those in public safety, that if we're to effectively address these issues, that it takes a village, and that's what we try to do through our outreach, and this is just one aspect of this. It sounds like a cliche, but knowledge is power. And so not only do we want to share information with you about timely subjects, but we want you to be a messenger and to take this information back to your neighborhoods, your Crime Watch clubs, and share with them, and which I know Pat and Pat do very well. Carolyn does as well. And so, number one, do we want you to do that? But again, mentioning that it's a learning process for us, number one, and as we have tonight, we always have individuals outside our office who are here to share their expertise and their perspective, from which we can learn as well. Tonight we have Judge Crawford here, and then over the next 3 weeks, as we have different subjects, next week is neglect of children. The third week it will be the use of social media in criminal prosecution, and in the fourth week it will be hate crimes legislation. And so in each of those sessions, while we might have individuals from our office as presenter, we will have outside expertise as well. And so it's also a learning experience for us, but in addition, it's a learning experience because it gives us the opportunity to listen to you and to hear your thoughts and to hear perspective on these issues. So thanks for coming out. It's going to be an interesting subject tonight. I've had the occasion to be interviewed by a number of the press outlets as they preview tonight's presentation, and as our presenters will confirm, mental health issues permeate the criminal justice system, and so it's incumbent upon us to find better ways to deal with those individuals who enter the criminal justice system with those mental health issues. So again, thanks for coming out. I'll be in and out over the next 4 weeks, and on the fourth week you'll actually be subjected to me as one of the presenters. But thanks again for coming.
And now I would like to introduce our moderator for tonight, Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Andy Fogle, to get us started with Session 1 titled Mental Illness and the Criminal Justice System. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Andy. I want to welcome everybody. I'm Andy Fogle. I'm with the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. I am a deputy prosecutor and the supervisor of what's called the Correction Division. Basically, that kind of, yes? Let me see, does that help? Yeah. Okay, sorry. Again, I'm Andy Fogle. I'm the deputy prosecutor, supervisor of what's called the Corrections Division, which means I oversee and supervise a lot of different areas in the office. But one of the most challenging areas that I supervise are what we call our problem-solving division. What we have in this county, in fact throughout the state, the law changed. Many of you are probably aware and have heard this number, 1006. 1006 is the amendment to the criminal code. What it's done is it's taken a lot of people who used to be able to go to prison and kept them in the communities with the idea that the community is better suited to handle certain types of crimes and people and get them back into the community. As one of the things that is, we all know, and I know that Prosecutor Curry has very much preached this, that it's public safety and keeping the community safe. And there's a couple of ways to do that. One is that we go after the bad guys and we make sure that they get prosecuted and they stay in prison for a very long time. And you've all heard of Richmond Hills. That's a very good example of what the office was able to do. But that might be 20, 15% of the people. Everybody else will kind of go through that revolving door and keep coming back into the system. And if you can help break that cycle of criminal activity, then you can make them productive and make them a part of your community. We have certain specific types of problems that we think we can reach. One of them is substance abuse, both alcohol and drugs, and we do have a drug treatment court. But more recently, what we've been able to develop is specialized courts, problem-solving courts for mental health. The big difference between the two, you can work, and the end goal in someone who is an alcoholic or is drug addicted is to get them to stop using. If someone has a mental health need, you can't get them to no longer have that mental health need. You've got to be able to help them control it, to get it in a situation where they can become productive, whether that means making sure they stay on their medicines, making sure that they go to their treatment, to make sure that they understand the responsibilities. Now again, I'm not talking about people who are insane. That's a different type of crime. We prosecute that differently. We're talking about people that have mental health needs. That because of that mental health need, it causes them to act out and get themselves in trouble. And if you can work with that, then perhaps you can, again, break that cycle of criminal activity. What we want to be able to present to you tonight is, it's been a long time in coming and trying to get these specialized courts and these specialized ways of dealing with this population so that they can manage themselves, they can be productive. One of the problems we've had, and it's not just Marion County and Indianapolis, it is not only statewide, it's nationwide. We have the resources, but a lot of the people can't afford those resources. So we have to figure out how we are going to be able to find those resources. And a lot of it's got to be community-based. The community needs to be part of the solution. Now, I'm going to introduce two people who have worked very, very hard in this area. One is Judge Barbara Cook Crawford. The judge and I have known each other a very long time. And in fact, we both teach trial practice at the McKinney School of Law together and done that for many years. I was a public defender when she was a prosecutor in Judge Webster Brewer's court. I think some of you probably remember Judge Brewer. Quite a taskmaster, but he made us good attorneys. But the judge came up with an idea a couple of years ago. Why don't we get a mental health court? And with the team that coalesced around her, she has done an incredible job of putting together a specialized court where we can deal with people that have mental health needs, mental health problems, and she can explain how that court works. We also have another court, which was a diversion court called PAIR, and that court was for misdemeanors, and if you got through that, we could dismiss the case. We're turning that into a problem-solving court so that we can get people before they get convicted, we can get people after they've been sentenced and having trouble making it in the community. Some other areas that I'll talk about later, we're trying to get an engagement center so the police could take these people, get them help without having to arrest them, and to get people to address what their needs are. But let me right now, I'm going to introduce Judge Crawford. Judge Crawford is a judge in the Marion County Superior Court, and she has been, how long have you been a judge, 5 years? About 5 years. She was with this office, in the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. She's also been a public defender, so she's been very much all through the system, and as I said, she teaches young law students how to try cases. So she has, again, taken a very, very big task and is hoping to coordinate an overall mental health specialized problem-solving type court, and I'll have her explain how that court works. Then I'm going to introduce you to Kathy Infinger. Kathy's with the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. She was, many of you are familiar with what was the community court that we had. That court has since gone away, but Kathy was the glue that kept it together. She was the one that made these people understand that you're going to damage your community, you're going to say you're sorry, and you're going to figure out what you did, and you're going to, in effect, atone for it. And she's been able to take those principles and move it into the mental health court setting, and has done a very, very good job in basically taking both the PAIR docket and the mental health docket from our perspective and turning it into something that can be very, very useful, that can help rehabilitate these folks that come into the court and hopefully get the majority of them back being law-abiding citizens. So with that, let me introduce to you Judge Crawford.
Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. Before I get started talking about the Mental Health Alternative Court, which is what our court is called now, I want to give you a little bit of background. As Andy said, I've been around the system for a long time, and when I first started back in 1980-something, I was a public defender, and I was assigned, my very first assignment was to a mental health court. Now, in those days, and up until recently, the mental health courts were kind of ad hoc. If there was a judge who was interested in that area, then that judge would try to fit in the mental health court cases within their dockets. And so that was the idea with Judge Goodman, Evan Goodman, and he was the first person I came across when I joined the Public Defender's Office as a judge who was interested in the mental health individuals. So it was at what is now Eskenazi. Back then it was Wishart Hospital. And it was on one of the floors in a really dark corner. And so every week I was assigned to go there, and that was my very first initiation, my very first opportunity to have the ability to have any interaction with individuals who had mental illnesses and who were caught up in the criminal justice system. That went on for several years. Judge Goodman retired, and because he was the only person that had that interest, the mental health court kind of went away. Then it resurfaced again several years later with another judge, Judge Barbara Collins. She also had an interest in it, and so she started devoting her docket to mental health court cases. And everybody, all of the judges, and by this time I was a deputy prosecutor, and I had a very different approach to dealing with them than I had as a public defender. But all of the judges were trying to funnel in to Judge Collins' court as many of these cases as possible. They were limited because they could only be misdemeanors or D felonies that could be reduced to misdemeanors. That mental health court also disappeared because Judge Collins retired. In the meantime, what we call a PAIR program began to develop, and that was part of the community court. And they only took misdemeanors and a limited number of them, and people who had low-level felonies, D felonies that could be reduced to a misdemeanor. So when Judge Collins retired in 2009, that left a void. And she had about 1,000 cases in her court. Those 1,000 cases then got dispersed to all of the judges in Marion County. I became a judge in 2010. And so all of the judges, the criminal court judges, saw their caseloads explode because of these additional cases. Not only did they explode in terms of numbers, but then the problem became, what do I do with this person? What do I do with this person who has a mental illness, who does not react the same way as someone who does not have a mental illness? What do I do with them? They don't really belong in jail. They shouldn't really be in the Department of Corrections, because all that does is warehouse them. They come right back out and do the same thing again. So what do we do with them? And in 2012, I opened my mouth and volunteered to try and see if something else could be done. And it was one of those things where everybody said, oh yeah, you got our support, we'll be right there with you. And I stepped forward and everybody else stepped back. So it became a real challenge then. I learned a lot during those early days. And one of the things I learned in working with the Sheriff's Department is the Sheriff's Department can house approximately 1,000, close to 1,100 people in the Marion County Jail. More than a third of those individuals that are residents in the jail at any given time have diagnosed mental illnesses. Diagnosed, so they have been to a doctor. They have been diagnosed as having a specific kind of condition. And there are many others there who have never been diagnosed. But the ones we know about are 30 to 40% of the Marion County. Now that costs money. That's the first thing. It costs money. It costs much more to house individuals who have mental illnesses than it does the other residents. So that's a drain on resources. They have to be examined. They have to receive medications, psychiatric medications, many of them, which are all expensive. And they have to be housed differently than individuals who don't have those same kind of issues. The other thing is a lot of them are on a revolving door. They come out, there's really no supervision for them that make sure that they take their medications, that they go to their therapy sessions, and so they end up committing another offense and they're back in again. So many of them are on a revolving door. They come right back in again. My idea, and after talking with the prosecutor's office, the public defender's office, people, other community-based healthcare providers, was to try and set up a court that would be institutionalized. In other words, it would be a court that would be part of the system. So it doesn't matter who the judge would be there. That court would be part of our criminal justice system, just as the drug court is. And so that is what we set out to do. In the process, we needed money. That took some time to convince legislators that this was something that was worth the investment. So we have had really good fortune in getting a couple of legislators, the Indiana Judicial Center and United Way of Central Indiana, to all pitch in and provide the funding so that we could provide treatment for individuals, because they all have just all kinds of issues that it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of court. Our court is set up to deal with people who have already been convicted of an offense. That is the first criteria. It must be post-conviction. The second is that their sentence has to be at least 365 days so that the court can work with them for that period of time, for a minimum of a year. They have to be having some issues, some problems with their probation or their community corrections, whatever their post-conviction sentence was. They have to be in a position where they're having some problems, they're continuing to commit violations. For instance, if they're on home detention, they are just taking off and leaving whenever they get ready to. That's against the rules. Or they are not complying with their mental health treatment. There can be any number of things, but they're having real problems, and they are facing the possibility of being sentenced to the Department of Corrections. The mental health court, then, we would like to be that agency that can step in, grab those people at that time to keep them out of the Department of Corrections, keep them in the community, give them the kind of monitoring and the kind of help that they need to get through it. And we do that in a number of different ways. First of all, they have to be willing. It's voluntary. We don't force anybody into the program. If they don't want to do the work to make themselves better and to keep themselves out of trouble, we don't force it. This is a voluntary program. But the first thing is they have to be willing to report to me every week in court. And I keep track by meeting with a group of people who supervise them. And our team consists of Kathy Empfinger, who represents the prosecutor's office. We have a representative from the public defender's office. We have a representative from Midtown. We also have a probation officer. We have a community corrections caseworker. And we have what is unique about Marion County, what we call recovery coaches. And those coaches are almost each individual's roommate. They have almost daily contact with the defendant. They call them, they go visit them, they take them to their therapy sessions if they need to, they help them with housing. So that recovery coach is the unique part. They're just not nobody, they just aren't supervised and let out of the community, onto the community. There is someone there that has virtually daily contact with that individual to make sure they're doing what they need to do. And to help them, if they run into a crisis, if they run into a problem, that recovery coach is their contact. So they report to me every week. They report to their probation officer every week to start out with. They take weekly drug tests because many of the individuals who have mental illnesses also have drug problems. So they take weekly drug tests, they also have almost daily contact with their recovery coach. Our program is set up into 4 phases. I just described the first phase. The second phase is if they have done that for a period of time, like 6 weeks to 2 months, then they can graduate to the second phase. And the second phase allows them to come into court every 2 weeks. So the level of supervision gradually reduces as they are able to take on more responsibility for themselves and taking care of themselves and making sure that they are doing the things they need to do to stay healthy. So they go through this series of this step-down kind of supervision for over a period of a minimum of a year. Now, one of the things I've learned, this is not a straight line. We start out with every 2 weeks, say for instance, if they get to phase 2, and then they may relapse if they use drugs. They may do something. They may violate in some way. And so at that point, the group of us decide what kind of sanction, what can we do, what kind of intervention can we impose on the individual to bring them back on track. It may be something like, and this has worked wonderfully well. I was surprised at this when someone suggested it. Having them write an essay. And I had a young woman write an essay. She has all these mental health issues. She has physical issues. She has 3 children, and she's a single mother. I have no idea how she does it and has been able to do as well as she's done. And she also has a history for using. She did well for like 3 months and fell off the wagon and used. So I had her write an essay, and the essay was, and she's going to school too. She's just a phenomenal lady. But the essay was, how does using this substance affect my children? So having her write that essay, and she did a lot of research, wrote a really nice essay, and it was enough to bring her back on track. But we try to think of ways that fit that individual to try and bring them back on track. So that has been, other than the experience I'd had as a deputy prosecutor and public defender, my experience, my personal experience with mental health issues was very limited. But I have on this team of individuals from Midtown and the recovery coaches from the prosecutor's office and the probation officer and the public defender, I have experts. And I depend on them. I take direction very well. So I depend on them to give me direction, to give me ideas, to help me make the right decisions in ordering what these people need to do. So that is our mental health alternative court. We started in January. We have a man from the IUPUI who is a professor, and he keeps statistics, and he's been coming and studying our group because we keep all of the statistics having to do with each of our participants. Right now, we started in January. We only have about, right now we have about 15, right, people that sounds about right. We have about 15 people. We are gradually getting in people 5 or 6 every month to increase our numbers. We hope by the end of the year to have 50, and we hope our program is designed to hold a maximum of 100. During the time we've only lost one person who has committed another offense during these 9 months that we've been in operation. So we are very hopeful that this will be something that will help individuals not come back into the system and help them become more productive citizens. Are there any questions that anyone has? Yes.
One comment, 100 doesn't seem like very many.
Yes.
In view of the numbers, is it possible that will expand in the future?
Oh, yes, it's possible. Right now, I'm thinking of money. With that is the money that we have right now.
My second question is, it's wonderful, all the expertise and the experts and everything. I just wonder, where are the families of these people during this process?
The families become part of the program.
Okay, their input is
Yes,
sought?
absolutely, absolutely. In fact, a lot of times, one of the first things we do is we have the individual into court. If they express an interest, from whatever court they're in, we bring them into the mental health alternative court. By the way, this is an open court, so anyone is welcome to attend. We meet every Friday morning at 9:30. It's in Criminal Court 9, which is on the 6th floor, east wing of the City County building. But when we do those, when we have someone who's expressed an interest, the first thing that happens is we have a probation officer that interviews that individual. And during that interview, we get information about them, what their criminal history is, what their family support system is, if they have it, and any other information that might be pertinent. Then our probation officer and the community corrections, if they're on community corrections, that individual comes into court, and we go over what the program is and what's to be expected of them. Very often, the families are there, some member of the family, and I always have the family member come up to the front of the court and sit with the participant, the proposed participant, so that they understand exactly what's going on. And a lot of times, especially with the recovery coaches, they develop a relationship with the family members in order to help that individual do what they're supposed to do. It can be wife, mother, sister.
And I guess I would just wonder too, I know that my frustration in dealing with the mental health system is, of course, in the healthcare, all they have to do is not sign a release and then you're shut out.
Right.
And I just wondered, I would just suggest that unless there's obviously something toxic or whatever going on in the family, that an indicator of maybe they shouldn't be in the program is their refusal to have their family input.
Well, one of the things they have to do is sign a release of information.
Okay.
And that release of information extends to those of us that are in the court as well as a family member. Because we have to have a way, the family member has to be an integral part of the team if it's going to work.
Right.
And so if they're not willing to do that, then that is a clear indication for us that there's a problem. Yes.
We also have, besides the mental health court, we have the drug treatment court. Hopefully, we're going to get a VA court which will address both mental health and substance abuse. And the difference with that court is that the provider is the VA hospital system. Again, with the pair with the mental health. But one of the things you have to remember about these people is they come to us very damaged in a lot of cases. So there is no strong family ties, friend ties, and that's one of the things that we have to struggle with in all of these courts is how do we reestablish some type of support system for these folks that isn't a negative support system. So the fact that they don't want the family in there doesn't mean we're going to give up and not let them in there. that may be the sign that we've got to work even harder, and that's what these coaches can do here. Hopefully, what the mentors and the VA court can do is to help bring a solid support system, hopefully family, but if not, friends, to be able to do
You have
this.
to, many times that the people that are associated or related to these folks are frustrated. They have been through this for so many years, and they have just had it. A lot of times, the fact that they are now have the opportunity to be a part of this program is encouraging to them, and they want to see that person get help, and so we found that they are often willing to come back in, okay, if this is going to work, I'll help any way I can.
There's protection in place for them.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I
Yes,
think we had a question way
yes.
back there, sir. You need to stand up and kind of yell at us.
I want to know, you said that, and you and the Sheriff's Department have both said that there's 30 to 40% of people who have diagnosed mental illnesses in jail.
Right.
Will this affect those that are currently being held in jail right
Yes, yes. One of the things we try to do is the people that are in jail and who have mental health illnesses, once we have a treatment, if they've expressed an interest in being part of it, once we decide, okay, this person has a diagnosed illness, have been convicted of something, they have a minimum of a 365-day sentence, and they are eligible for our program. We will, once we have a treatment plan in place, we know they have a place to live, we know they have a treatment provider they can go to, we will then ask the jail to release that person. So yes, it does affect them.
But if they don't have a 365-day sentence, it doesn't affect them?
We've looked at a few that have some time, not quite 365, like some may have 270 days or something like that. But in order for us to do what we need to do, we have to have a significant amount of time to be able to work with them. Otherwise, it's a get out of jail free card. And that is not what we want.
And just one last comment. Does the Sheriff's Department know that this program is going on? Because when they were at
Oh,
the
yeah.
city
Oh, yeah,
council
they
meeting,
do.
Oh, yeah.
they were
They're
at the city
partners
county
with us.
meeting a week and a half ago, and they were up there talking to the city county as if this doesn't exist. And they were
Oh, no,
saying,
this exists, and we work closely with the Sheriff's Department.
What you have to understand is that the Marion County Jail is probably the largest mental health facility in the state of Indiana. And they basically, and that's just basically giving out medicines. They don't have the staffing or the monies to provide treatment for them. You know, they know that this exists, but again, you got to walk and you got to crawl before you can walk.
I'm
And so
sure-
we have to get started with the program so we can expand it.
I'm sure we're not getting them out as fast as they'd like. And I'm sure we're not releasing as many as we'd like, but my philosophy has been I am not going to release some because there is a safety issue for the public. I am not going to release anybody out into the community unless I am sure that we have a plan in place to supervise that individual and to make sure that individual is doing those things they need to do so that nothing happens.
The other thing you have to understand at the jail, that I think it's like 95% of the people are pre-trial. They're not post-trial. What Judge Crawford has is post-trial. So usually the sheriff is very overwhelmed with those people who he is waiting to get through the criminal justice system. So the amount of people that the judge would see is going to be a very small, less than 5%, and probably less than that have mental illness needs that are in the jail. So this
Post-conviction.
yeah, these are all post-conviction. And when we get to the PAIR program later, that is the pre-trial. Those are people that have not yet gotten convictions. But when the sheriff talks about the problem, the overwhelming majority of those folks are awaiting trial. They've not been post-conviction. They've not already had convictions.
Yes, there's a gentleman in the back here in the green shirt. Yes, you've had your hand up a long time.
I want to thank you. Having worked 17 and a half years in inpatient psychiatry at Wisher, having worked with Judge Goodwin and Darden and Webster
Yes.
and Brewer and
Yes.
all those that writing letters on behalf of the patients, I want to thank you for again establishing what is an outpatient treatment for mental health people. It's unfortunate in our state and in our city that those funds evaporated back in the early 80s for this type. So this system used to be in play, but it's gone away. And now, basically, a person has to have legal charges on them in order to get mental health treatment, which is a tragedy in our society. So I want to thank you for at least making an attempt and putting a dent in what you're doing. I see what you're trying to do. I mean, that's a tough battle, but there used to be a system in play, and then in the early 80s it was eliminated. So thank you very much. Okay.
Let's take one more question, then we're going to take a break.
All right, there's two here, the people that have had their hands up in the back there, sir.
Mike Daw, I'm representing Community Alliance of the Far East Side.
Yes.
From your perspective, Judge, are the rates, the caseload of the courts involving folks afflicted with mental illness, are they on the increase or the decrease?
I can't answer that. I don't know, to be honest with you. I don't know whether they're increasing. I do know that I am seeing more and more people with those issues, and more of them are young people. I am seeing more and more people between the ages of probably 19 and 35 in that area. The vast majority of the people that I have to deal with, they're within that age group. So I can't tell you whether or not it's increasing. I can tell you that there's no shortage of them.
Okay,
Yes.
and this will be the last question, then we're going to take a break.
Okay.
Hold your questions. This is not going to be the last question for the judge. This is the last question at the moment, okay?
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Hey, one thing that I have been talking about a lot is outreach in every neighborhood. For instance, I'm in the Crown Hill Neighborhood Association. They're Mapleton, Fall Creek, and all of us are connected. I call it neighbor friendly, where we're there on the regular and visible, so maybe people feel more comfortable coming and talking with us, and helping with the follow-up and whatever. A lot of people agree that we need something like that, where to start, how to do it, and whatever. And also maybe possibly we get neighbor friendly. Some of these people may come in and talk to us about a brother that's having a problem to get to him or her or aunt, uncle, whatever, before they even get to you guys. So how can
We understand the importance of the community, and one of the things that we eventually want to expand to do is including community organizations. It's a community-based treatment court. We depend on agencies that are already in the community, and there are so many resources in Indianapolis. The problem has always been that they're siloed. There's Midtown here, and there's Adult and Child there, and there's Gallahue there, but there has to be a way to bring all of that together so we can put our hands on it when we need it. And that's one of the things that is good about this program that we have started, because we have individuals who are experienced enough in the area that they can go out and find stuff. We had a man who's schizophrenic, seriously ill, and homeless. And so we were able to get him into Wheeler, and one of the people that works on our program had a good contact there at Wheeler, get him into a STEPS program there. And then he was doing well there. He wanted to go to school, he wanted to work, but he had some educational deficiencies. So we got here at the library, we got him a tutor to work with him. So he's doing that. The STEPS program ran out. He didn't have a place to live. So one of his recovery coach was able to scour the community, find him housing. So he's now living in his apartment. We gave him a gift certificate so he could help get some groceries and food into his apartment. And he's doing very well. He's doing very well. He's in our phase 3. But we understand that the community is a huge part of making this work. And your suggestion is well taken.
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Please, there's still refreshments back there. Okay, thank you all. Now, you've heard Judge Crawford talk about a mental health court that takes care of people that have already been in the system and them trying to reintegrate back into the community through probation or parole or through community corrections just wasn't working because of their mental health. But what about those people who have come into the system but don't yet have convictions? Well, there's a program that's gone on for many years and was put into the laws of the state of Indiana and our statutes, which was basically pair diversion. And Kathy Infiger will tell you what pair is. I usually remember, but I'll let her define that. But what it basically is, it started off as a misdemeanor program for a very specific type of mental health need. And if you could show that that mental health problem is what caused the criminal activity, and it was mostly misdemeanors, then if you did everything you could, the prosecutor, through its diversion authority, would dismiss the case. What we expanded that to was we weren't getting a lot of misdemeanors, so we let that be D felonies, the lowest type of felony, which are now in the new system called F6. And we would reduce it down to a misdemeanor. But as Judge Crawford started getting her court going, it was, well, what about people that have even more serious problems, mental health problems, and perhaps a higher degree of crime where nobody's been hurt, nobody's been endangered, but what can we do with them? So what we decided to do as an office was to take that PAIR program and ask the courts and the PDs and probation and community corrections to form a team, and we gave that over, just as Judge Crawford oversees the mental health docket, Judge Jones oversees the PAIR docket, which is also part of mental health. They are very fortunate to have the same court coordinator. And she has done a wonderful job getting us in shape where very soon we're going to go to the Indiana Judicial Center and get certified as a problem-solving dockets, both of these dockets. But the PAIR basically is pretrial. Someone comes in, they can get themselves back on track, but still get mental health help and go through a very structured program, and the prosecutor will dismiss the case. What we're hoping to do is to expand that to other types of diversion. In some situations, we may not be able to dismiss, but instead of a mandatory prison time, we could give you probation. We could reduce the type of offense you have if you get through the program. Again, the key to this is to break the cycle of criminal activity and, most importantly, to keep the public safe. So again, we're not taking people that have created batteries or have done very serious crimes and have a mental health problem. That's a different case. That's a different scenario. You plead that out or you try that differently. What we're talking about are the nonviolent type of crimes where you'd want to try to get somebody back into their routine of medication and back into getting their help system put back together and getting their counseling. But that program has been called the PAIR program. As I said, Deputy Prosecutor Kathy Infiger has been with this program since for the last about year. Before that, she was the anchor that we had for the community court. So a lot of what we did in community court of trying to get people to understand how they have to be the right type of people to get back into the community, meaning law-abiding, respecting other people, and doing medically what you're supposed to be doing. It's just kind of right up Kathy's alley, given all the great experiences she's had. So I'm going to introduce Kathy, and she's going to explain the PAIR program to you.
Thank you, Andy. And I think really you've already kind of done a really good job of explaining the PAIR program. So, you know, it's getting late. I'm not going to go into it a whole lot unless you guys all have questions. I'm just going to kind of throw out a little bit of what I've learned over the years. I did do PAIR as well as community court some 10 years ago, back in the day when Judge Goodman had it as well. So I did PAIR for a good 4 years. And then out at community court, because of the nature of the clients that we had out there and the defendants we had out there, we had an awful lot of homeless gentlemen, and they all had co-occurring illnesses. Not all of them, I mean a lot of them. Mental illness, drug addiction. So I've been dealing with this issue on and off over the years. And you know what? It's not easy. We in the criminal justice system, this is not an easy issue to deal with for several reasons. First of all, you're talking about what's going on in somebody's head. You can't get in there and see it. You can only guess. You can only surmise. We have our probation officers. We have our mental health counselors. Okay, we have our case managers. All these people who try to get as much information about this person, their history, their family history, their medical history. I mean, you can't get inside somebody's head. Psychiatry has come so far in our nation's history, so we know so much more now than we used to, but we still don't know an awful lot. So you have all these issues. Something's not right with this person. It's very obvious. Exactly what is it? Sometimes it takes a while to diagnose them correctly. You can go through 2 or 3 diagnoses. You can have a diagnosis of schizophrenia and a co-occurring illness of substance abuse, and you can also be an alcoholic. You can have 2 or 3 diagnoses, okay, and they kind of overlap each other. One is a little bit more prevalent than the other one. One is a little bit more of a problem than the other one. And trying to unravel this mystery of what is going on inside this gentleman or this lady's head that prompts her to behave the way she does and cause the problems in her family and her relationship and her work relationships and lands that person in the criminal justice system is a real trick. I mean, it just is. And so unraveling all of that and knowing what to do, and then you throw on that all the other barriers. You throw on the barriers of their family's given up on these people, okay? I mean, if you're dealing with a young person, that's a little easier because usually they're still, around mom and dad and have brothers and sisters. But you talk about a gentleman who's 50 years old, his family's given up on him. He's been wandering the streets of Indianapolis for 20 years. He has no support. That's where our recovery coaches come in. That's where the mental health case managers try to bring those wraparound services that Andy was talking about. You take the fact that legally, Judge Crawford, nobody can order anybody into treatment. Judge Crawford cannot give a court order to say, you have to take your medicine or I'm locking you up. They can't do that. So you have somebody who's going to be in denial of their mental illness, or somebody who says, well, I may have a mental illness, but I don't like my meds because I don't like the way they make me feel. And that happens all the time. You take all those factors and you take the fact that we've come up with some court programs that we try to help them. We try to induce them to get the help they need. It's kind of the carrot and the stick. The prosecutor says, okay, go get the help you need and pair, and I'll dismiss your case. That's kind of the carrot, because these people, I can't make them do it. The only incentive we have in the mental health court with Judge Crawford is, well, you're on probation and you're on community corrections and you're about to violate and you could go to DOC. That's about the only incentive we've got. So you can either try really hard to deal with your mental illness or you got DOC, but the reality is we can't make anybody do this. So they're voluntary programs with issues inside somebody's head that we cannot get in and we cannot see. A psychiatrist cannot even see. Thankfully, we have psychiatrists and case managers who have learned a lot over the years, so we've come a long way, but nobody can get inside your head and know exactly what voices you're hearing and what it sounds like and what's going on. That's a real trick. And then, like I said, you throw in all the barriers of these people are like, well, I don't like how the medications make me feel, so I'm going to go out and drink, or I'm going to go out and use some cocaine, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do some spice, and oh my goodness, and if they're doing that and taking meds, okay, let's just really blow things up. It's very challenging, okay? It's just very challenging. So the brave people who say, you know what, I'm going to take your help. I mean, these people struggle. I want your help. The people who come through our courts and work at this are my heroes. They really are. They're unbelievable people. Because what they try to deal with are things that you and I cannot really imagine. We have come, our country, when you think about where we've come, was it, 80 years ago maybe? I don't know. When psychopharmacology today is so much better than it was. There was a time, people ask, well, are we seeing more of these people on the streets and more of these people in the criminal justice system and judges? I don't really know. I don't really either, because you know what we used to do with these people a long time ago? We used to put them in a mental institute because we didn't know what to do with them. That's where they were. We even would cut open their brain. It was called a lobotomy. We'd take out part of their brain because their brain was messed up. We'd put them through shock therapy because we didn't know what to do with them. And I don't think it's because we as a country were unkind. We didn't know, because you can't get in their head and see. So we've come a really long way. And what's happened, because we have come such a far way, and because psychopharmacology has become better and better, sometimes I think it's almost too much better, because that's all you see on TV are, ads for drugs, depression this and drugs for that. And, but we've come a long way. Psychiatrists understand so much. They've identified so many more disorders and illnesses. We've learned so much, and so because of that knowledge and because how far we've come, then everybody decided to get a little bit more humane and quit just locking these people up like animals in a zoo. So we're going to not institutionalize them all. We're not going to just throw them all in the hospital. We're going to get them, and we're going to get them some help because we know they can get help. So we close all the hospitals, not literally, there are still some hospitals. But we pull them out of the hospitals, put them in the community. Whoa, guess what? The community is not ready for this because now everybody's completely overloaded. Okay? And some of these people really do need a little bit more help than just what the community centers can provide. I think they're slow, they're catching up. And getting people on health insurance is really helping. But we still are in this unbalanced state. We've come a long way, but we still have so much farther to go. So anyway, that's my little spiel. I don't want to take up the time. It's getting late, but there were a lot of questions, and I want to hear from you all. I want you all to have a chance to ask your questions. If somebody really wants to know something specific about PAIR, I'm happy to tell you. Andy pretty much said it in a nutshell. It's a pre-conviction. As a prosecutor, I say, you get in treatment for a year, you stay compliant, I'll dismiss your case. That's my incentive to try to get you to get the help.
Personally, I would know what does PAIR stand for?
Oh, Psychiatric Assertive Identification and Referral.
We did not name it. We inherited it.
Well, it's been around for probably almost 20 years. And another one of the barriers, another one of the problems with all of this is defense attorneys and judges and anybody trying to actually identify that this person has a mental illness. They may present in front of you and present in front of a judge, and they only have a small window of time to talk to this person. There's thousands of cases in the criminal justice system in Marion County. So this was all about identifying these people. Once you can identify that they need some help, then their attorney can start working with them and try to get them focused into where they think they can benefit the most from some help.
Let me just kind of add real quickly, and then we'll take questions. Compared to what we had in this county maybe 5 years ago, which was the PAIR, but it was a diversion for mostly misdemeanors, we did have the beginnings of a drug treatment court, which has now begun to really flourish, and we now have a drug reentry court, which is similar to what Judge Crawford has, of people coming back. Well, these people are coming back from prison and on probation or parole. She will get some people that haven't gone to prison yet. And the new Veterans Court, which will be our first dual diagnosis, meaning we can bring people in that have both mental health and substance abuse problems. We have a treatment provider, which is the VA hospitals that can help out. This is a long way from when I first started. One of my many different jobs in the legal profession was being legal counsel for the Indiana Department of Correction. And when I first started, basically people went to the psych ward up in a prison in the northern part of the state of Indiana, heavily medicated. Then when their time was up, they get them committed to a mental hospital. That's changed. They now try to treat those people they can and get them back into the general population. So the whole idea has changed considerably. One of the things that we are trying to do as a community is that we are trying to create a center where if somebody is really looking like they're drunk or they're having a mental health need, rather than arresting them, be able to take them to a center where they can get help rather than having to arrest them. That's still in the planning stage, so we're hoping that goes. Again, one of the things, as I said when I opened up these remarks, one of the things that our boss, Prosecutor Curry, is very, very strong on is you've got to break the cycle of criminal activity for those people. You've got to make sure that you protect the public and you can address those needs. And if there are needs that you can find that have a way of being treated, like addiction, like mental health, by all means, our office wants to be a full partner in doing it. But by the time they come to us, they're pretty well damaged. We need you to be able to help us figure out who these folks are, give them the support that they need so that we can work with you. Our job is not just to, you can't get these people and just institutionalize them, throw them in prison, throw away the key. That's not what prisons are for. To put people in prison that you're afraid of, not people you're mad at, or people that you don't know what to do with. And so, kind of based on that, this is a very, very important initiative for our office, for the courts, for the defense bar, the public defenders, probation, community corrections. So with that, we'll take questions. Any more questions for Judge Crawford or for Kathy? Yes.
Many times when people are sentenced or it's based on like their programs or ability to attend anger management programs and the cost of all those fees. Are the fees, if they're unable to pay for these types of classes and we don't want them to go to jail because they couldn't for further debt or couldn't pay for their
Yeah, and I know the judge will address this, but we don't have debtors' prisons in this state. I mean, I've heard other states have put people in jail for not paying their fines and costs. We try not to do that. The problem, though, is we have a limited amount of resources. So that ends up limiting the amount of people we can help. But I'll let Judge Crawford address this. I've never known her to throw anybody in jail because they couldn't afford to go to a program.
With the mental
But I was
health.
just wondering if any type of, attendance of anger management or any of those kind of things, are those things put aside till they are successful in the program?
It's kind of repurposed. Instead of, if someone comes to us and one of their, the Mental Health Alternative Court, one of their conditions of probation was that they attend anger management courses. One of the things that our recovery coaches can do is to work with that individual one-on-one to do the same thing that they would get out of an anger management course. But the individual wouldn't have to pay for it, all right? We work with contractors. We have funding to work with contractors to get those kinds of treatments for individuals. And the same goes for the drug treatment court. If someone comes to us and they have a co-occurring condition where they have a mental illness and they have a substance use problem, then we try to get them into programs. And we try to get them in the programs in a way that either they don't have to pay or we can subsidize it for a while till they are able to pay. One of the issues that comes up is that people don't have any source of income. So the recovery coaches can assist them in applying for SSI, can assist them in applying for insurance. We have funding available for treatment and we consider that treatment. So we have funded people to go into, for instance, probably like to stay, Lucille Raines. And so we have paid for it. out of the funds that we have for a period of time at least, to give them a chance to get sober, to get on their feet, to get some skills under their belts, so that they can then eventually pay for it themselves.
Can I just add that all of the problem-solving courts that Andy has discussed, the drug treatment court, PAIR, mental health court, the veterans court, they're all problem-solving courts. And so they're all run by a different judge and different members, and they're all structured a little differently, but they all have one thing in common, and that is every court has a team, and these team members put their heads together and they solve a problem. So if somebody needs anger management, we find a way to get what they need, whether it's this court has this money, but this court doesn't, we'll find something else. We all put our heads together to come up with a solution to the problem.
And let me just tell you this, that in these courts, a conviction is not a victory for the prosecutor. That's not what we want. An acquittal is not a victory for the defense. That's not what they want. It's when we can get these people back on track and get them restarted on their lives. You know that old saying, hi, we're from the government and we're here to help? Well, we really mean it. We really are here to help.
One more question is, the recovery coaches, are they trained volunteers, like a foster parent or something?
No, they are trained, yes.
Through Centerstone?
Right,
Okay.
Centerstone is an organization,
So-
Midtown is the other one.
So
We have,
let's just say you're low on recovery coaches, and let's look around the room, and if
we-
everyone went through a class of this and could we be recovery coaches?
recovery coaches are hired by those organizations, by Midtown or Centerstone. They also are providing training to other community-based mental health agencies.
I think our recovery coaches have masters in social work degrees.
Right, and they each have a caseload limit, so we don't go above that. If they get close to that limit, then we do have the funds to allow them to hire someone else on as an addition, so we can absorb the cases.
You had your hand up and then we'll go to you.
Are the
If you could stand
program,
up so we can hear you a little better, sorry.
are the people in the program in it for a specified time, or does it depend on their
It's
progress?
at least a minimum amount of time, because what all the literature will tell you and all the other courts that we've seen all over the country, you don't have at least a minimum amount of time, it doesn't do any good. The maximum amount of time is really going to depend on how they do it. You don't do it for a year. You do it until you hit certain benchmarks.
Yeah, and the maximum amount of time for the mental health alternative court is 3 years. A minimum of 1 year, and it can be up to 3 years. It cannot be in excess of what their original sentence is. So, in other words, I just can't have somebody in there forever just because I like it.
But at the other end of it,
There's a limit.
at the other end of it, with the PAIR program, the way the statute reads, it's a year. But if we can get it certified as a problem-solving court, it could go less than that, it could go more than that. But again, it's outcome-based, it's not time-based. Yes?
Of the roughly
Could you say it so we
400,
can all hear?
of the roughly 400 people currently in the Marion County Jail diagnosed with mental illness, what percentage would qualify for this type of program?
I think I can answer that because I looked at those stats once. Depending on what we have, I would say at a minimum, maybe 30 or 40% of them, because a lot of them would have types of crimes, sex crimes, serious batteries, murders.
No
things
murder.
like that.
No murder, no sex
Yeah, we
crime.
can't take those folks.
No serious
But if you looked at the ones that we could probably do, it could be 30, 40%. One of the things we can't do in diversion, but you can take in a certified mental health court, are DUIs. You can't divert those and dismiss. The law does not permit that. But if we get a certified court, we might be able to deal with them in some type of forensic diversion type programs. But I would say that people that could qualify for all these courts right now, I think 40% might be.
So we might be talking that 100 that you're aiming for.
Oh yeah, we definitely would be able to.
Oh, yeah,
do that.
we get there.
I mean, that's,
We'll get there, and people are coming in all the time. We're interviewing people for participation all the time.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, kind of So do you have a dollar amount that you could put around maybe one of the parents that come through the program?
How much did you donate for us?
I can't give you that because it depends on each individual. There are some that we don't have to put out any money for. But there are others that they need help. And so we will do things to help them with housing, to help them with any other kind of treatment that they might need that has to be paid for. Sometimes since they're tested for drugs every week, that's $13 a pop. And so sometimes we can help by footing that bill for them. So it depends on what each individual needs, what we have. And we have special contracts like with Harbor Life, Lucille Raines, where they are willing to accept these people at kind of a reduced rate for bed space, as long as they have a bed space.
Back there, sir.
There's someone back
Yeah,
there.
the gentleman.
Sorry. So the court doesn't take on some of the more serious offenses.
We do. That's not correct. We do take on the serious offenses. We do not take on offenses that involve murder, the sex offenses, or serious cases that end up with serious bodily injury. But things like forgeries, robberies, burglaries, we have gotten all of those, and those are all major felonies.
Is there any sort of pattern that you all have seen where maybe some people start out with some of the smaller offenses and eventually it escalates to some of those larger offenses?
That's speaking about the system.
We see that.
I mean, that's a standard pattern where people start out with conversion and maybe a theft and they end up in a robbery. I mean, that is not an unusual progression of
And what you have to understand is that's where we have to break that cycle of criminal activity, because with a lot of these people we see, it can escalate up or they end up dead, especially when you're dealing with people with serious addiction problems or even people with very serious mental health problems. It can either go here or you never see them again because the problem has killed them. Anybody from over? Yeah.
You mentioned someplace up in northern Indiana. I was wondering if you might have been referring to Logansport, and if you could explain. I have heard that the facility at Logansport was basically a hospital for the criminally insane. Can you explain that?
It's just a state hospital.
It's a state hospital, and this is what happens if someone comes in, and this is completely different from the mental health alternative court. Has nothing to do with that. But very often people who have mental illnesses come into court and their condition is so severe that they are not competent to understand what's going on, and they're also not competent to assist their lawyer in mounting their defense. So they will be examined, and if that happens, usually it's the defense attorney says, Judge, there's something wrong with this person. I need this person examined because I can't communicate with them. So then then I would order that individual be examined by 2 doctors. And if those doctors come back and say this person is in a condition where they don't understand what's going on, they cannot understand what a judge is, what the attorneys do, what happens during the trial, what a plea agreement is. They can't understand any of that, nor can they help give their attorney information to help with their case. Then that person then I ask the Department of Mental Health, find a place for this individual. He's not competent to stand trial. And then they are sent to one of the mental health facilities. I think there's 5 of them in Indiana.
Right, but that really doesn't deal with what we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's a totally different
It's a totally
area. We don't
different
deal with
thing.
those
So,
folks.
but is that the facility you were talking about, or were you talking about something else?
Well,
You said
Logansport's the same
earlier in your
hospital.
career, or
Oh, no, this is the Department of Correction. They had a prison, one of the prisons actually had a mental health section. This isn't a hospital. This was part of the prison system.
What town was that?
Well, it was at Westville when I was there. I think it's
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Beatty.
Sorry?
It was Beatty.
What county is that in?
Beatty.
I'm sorry, I can't hear
It
you.
was Beatty.
Oh, Beatty was a hospital, but as far as the institution with the Department of Correction, at one time it was Westville, and I think it, I know it's moved, I've been with the VOC for a while, but no, that was internal. That was
Okay.
not somebody that would go afterwards.
Thank you.
Okay?
Mr. Eden?
Yes, quick question. The PAIR program for diversion, once it's dismissed, what does that look like on the record? Does it reflect the PAIR program or anything to do
No,
with mental health?
in fact, I can answer that. What'll happen is, once it's dismissed, depending what they want to do, 1 year after the arrest, they can ask for it to be expunged.
Okay.
If any of you were here last year, I think I did the expungement piece for you, and that arrest, that basically it's 3538-9-1, and 1 year after the arrest, it can be sealed, so that if anybody tries to find it under official means, like going to the court, going to the clerk, they won't be able to. But they have to take the initiative and do that. All it'll show is dismissed if they don't get it expunged. It's
Okay.
not going to say, you know, if you go into the record and see it, you can see they went on diversion.
But it'll
they
just
can
say
get that hit.
dismissed and it won't reflect mental health, diversion, or...
Well, if they look into the file, they will. But if you get it expunged, they won't even be able to see the file.
see that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes. Some of the buildings, the prisons or the jails downtown, that they want to consider too small and they want to move and put it somewhere else. Why come we can't use those buildings, or better yet, why can the state cannot give one of those huge buildings for these patients? I mean, just like they can go into an old hotel and refurbish it, why not put some,
You know what, that's beyond my pay grade. That goes into the executive branch. Where they handle the money and all those kinds
Or
of things.
who is your counselor? Who represents you in the city county council?
District 10.
Well, I would go to your counselor, find out who your counselor is, and I don't think, since we're gonna get a new mayor in a few months anyway, you might wait, but you gotta go to the mayor of the city county council, they control all of that.
Yeah. So all of us can bind together?
We can, see what it does. But as the judge says, do we have time for one more question? Yes, sir, in the back.
Hi, Clyde Daw again from Community Alliance of the Far East Side. According to the NAACP, the U.S. has 5% of the world population, but 25% of the world prisoners. The U.S. also has, we have the highest incarceration rate in the world. The world average is 100 incarcerated prisoners to every 100,000 people. In the U.S., the total average is 500 for every 100,000 persons. And in the U.S. black men, 3,074 to every 100,000 persons. It is established in 1958 in the New Haven study that there is a direct relationship between poverty and mental illness. Would you care to comment on any of those
I
things?
don't disagree with what you're saying. We have to deal with the realities of what we've got. The people that are coming into the system.
I just want to say I admire you all for taking care of folks going through the system. I can imagine your courts are frenetic, and the work that you do is...
Actually, you know what, I don't view it as taking care of them. That sounds a little paternalistic to me. What I view it as is the people on the team that I work with, we're providing an opportunity for those individuals who want to make a change in their lives to do it. And I tell all of them, we are here, we'll give you whatever assistance we can, but it's up to each of them individually to do the work. So I'm not taking care of them, but they would have the opportunity in the alternative court to do things to help themselves if they're willing to do the work.
We have time for one more question there.
My question is have you had any cases where people have been removed off the medication?
No. No, I haven't.
Removed by their doctor? But I'm sorry.
Yes, taken off the medication that they're put on.
They have changed.
A lot of times their medications will get changed.
Their medications will change.
But it's still ongoing to take
They may need another time, because we've had that several times, where the medication just isn't working, it isn't doing what it's supposed to, or the individual is not reacting to it well. And so this is another place where the recovery coach will go with the individual to the psychiatrist to act as backup and support for the individual to say, this isn't working, doctor, is there something else we can try that might work? And we've done that several times.
We would like to thank all of you. We're getting the signal in the back that time's about up. But thank you. You've taught us a lot. We really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to talk with you.
If anybody has any other questions about just mental illness in general, or if you have loved ones or people that you know of who need some help and support, there's all kinds of materials back there on that back table.